Mythologizing the Sixties by Pauline Kael. Jane Fonda isn't playing a character in Coming Home. She's playing an abstraction, a woman being radicalized. The time is 1968, the place is Los Angeles, and she's Sally Hyde, the proper repressed wife of a hawkish Marine captain, played by Bruce Dern. Sally has been married for several years, but has no children and nothing to do after her husband leaves for Vietnam, so she volunteers for work in the Veterans Hospital. On the day she signs up, she crashes into Luke, played by Jon Voight, who was an athlete when she knew him in high school and is now a paraplegic in a rage of helplessness. She discovers that the men injured in Vietnam are embittered by neglect, and that the other officers' wives, frozen-faced, sitting in their club, all groomed and primped, don't want to know about it. As she works among the men, her identification shifts away from the idle-class women. She trades her sexless, crisply laundered clothes for T-shirts and jeans. She stops straightening her hair and lets it frizz up and tangle. Dramatists have always had a terrible time showing their characters growing, and have usually had to resort to speeches announcing the interior changes. Movies can spread the transformation more novelistically over a period of months or years. Sally Hyde gradually and entertainingly loses her inhibitions, but she develops only to the level of doctrinaire awareness which has been reached by the people who put Coming Home together, and this means that the character has a hollow tone, the same inauthenticity that the home front heroines had in Second World War movies. Fonda develops a sorrowing woman smile. The other characters are playing abstractions too. Voight, round-faced and blonde-bearded, is like a Chris Christopherson who studied acting. He handles the transition from rage to boyish romantic hopes with star magnetism, and he gives his scenes a sexual undercurrent that may help put the movie over at the box office. But his role, with scenes that appear to have been suggested by actions of the paraplegic anti-war activist Ron Kovic, could be a parody of the new sanctimoniousness. Luke is a feeling human being, gentle and firm, stuffed with grand compassion. He embraces the distressed and comforts them with thoughts such as, "You have enough ghosts to carry around." The measure of Voight's stature as an actor is that he very nearly gets by with his pontifical lines. Sally's friend Vi, played by Penelope Melford, is a mini-skirted version of the smart, knowing, heart-of-gold working girl of 30s movies. She wises us up with her social perceptions. She explains that she went back where her home used to be, but they tore down my past and built a shopping center. Her salty, pithy, neo-Odessian dialogue carries the label gallant proletarian. We may not have had other movies with so much remorse about the Vietnam War, but we've been here before. Coming Home started out to be about how the Vietnam War changed Americans, and turned into a movie about a woman married to a hawk who has her first orgasm when she goes to bed with a paraplegic. Sally Hyde's hospital collision with Luke is actually the only strong dramatic sequence, and the porny romanticism of their affair has a morbid kick to it. The musical prelude to the sex is reverential. Movie makers haven't found a slicker way of combining purity and eroticism since Marlene Dietrich unknowingly married a runaway monk, played by Charles Boyer. Viewers could go on fantasizing about this bedroom scene, except that Sally announces the obvious, "That's never happened to me before." The politics of the film are extremely naive and possibly disingenuous. Coming Home doesn't oppose the Vietnam War on political grounds. The film embodies a pure pacifist attitude toward Vietnam. The war is condemned on the basis that our soldiers are maimed and killed in it. Except for a sex scene or two, Coming Home is the sort of film a Protestant church group might put out, blandly humanitarian. Though it was shot by Haskell Wexler, a wizard of fast-moving, strong graphics, it has a waspy glaze to it, a soft pastel innocuousness, as if all those involved were so concerned to get the message across without offending anyone that they fogged themselves in. Jane Fonda's face seems a little vague and pasty, as if she didn't want to stand out too much. Her features seem to have disappeared. She's trying to act without her usual snap, and the result is so unsure she comes flutteringly close to a Norma Shearer performance. The picture has a peculiar anticipatory tension. You wait so long for something to happen you're ready to jump out of your skin. At first, it seems that the director, Hal Ashby, has just a drifting, dawdling approach to getting underway. Then you realize that this amorphous, inappropriately dreamy movie reflects Ashby's approach to the subject. Maybe to any subject now. A former editor, Ashby is generally referred to as a meticulous craftsman. He took more than 4 months to shoot Coming Home, and then 8 months to supervise the cutting. Can it be that it's so sloppily made because he took so long over it? He plans in the sense of wanting to have enough to edit, and then he has too much. He must get overwhelmed by choices, and so far inside whatever he's shot that he loses the spine of the story. Ashby's 2 best-known films, The Last Detail and Shampoo, had tightly structured scripts by Robert Towne, and Ashby, working within trim shooting schedules, stayed with those scripts. But he had greater control over his next picture, Bound for Glory, and he and his editor, Robert C. Jones, added explicit, messagey scenes and extended the film until it meandered into shapelessness. The Coming Home project, initiated by Jane Fonda, began with a script by Nancy Dowd. Then Waldo Salt was brought in for a rewrite, and the Dowd script was mostly discarded. And then, when John Schlesinger, who was expected to direct, left the project and Ashby was hired, he brought in his former editor, Robert C. Jones, who gets his first credit as a writer. The script that emerged from all this labor and God knows how many conferences is a mixture of undeveloped themes and is so thinly textured that Ashby has filled in the dead spaces by throwing a blanket of rock songs over everything. It's disconcerting to hear words like Strawberry Fields Forever when you're trying to listen to what people are saying to each other. The music isn't used for a strong beat or for excitement. It's more like a deliberate distraction, as if Ashby had got bored with the movie and wanted to hear what was going on in the next room. Ashby's mood scenes can be very personal and touching. A sequence with Luke on the hospital basketball court, telling Sally that he's being discharged from the place, and Sally on the other side of the fence, telling him that she's going to Hong Kong to see her husband, does everything it needs to do and more. The feelings spill over and stay with us. The whole picture is evocative of that messy time. It's permeated with free-floating anxiety, and Luke's stricken eyes serve as an emblem of the country's guilty confusion. Coming Home idles, it goes from scene to scene intuitively, romantically, until Sally's visit to Hong Kong. After that, the cutting is often like a door slamming in our faces. And, without any dramatic preparation, there's bam-pow cross-cutting between simultaneous events. In one sequence, Vi's despondent younger brother Bill, played by Robert Carradine, is having a fit of depression at the hospital, and Luke, having been on the phone with him, realizes the condition the boy is in and rushes to his aid. We see Luke wheeling himself to his car, folding up his wheelchair and driving off, and then arriving at the hospital and racing through the ward. But, in between, we see the paraplegics at the hospital staring at Bill and half-heartedly calling out to him, instead of spinning down the corridor to get help. One's time sense is violated. Movie cross-cutting was more highly developed than this in D.W. Griffith's day. The plot device of having Luke and Sally under FBI surveillance is introduced at such an unstrategic moment that we half expect the FBI men to burst in on their big love scene and beat Luke up. The captain returns from the war limping from a leg wound, ignobly received, and overnight his limp is gone. And what is Sally doing in the scene in which she stands out, holding her arms to her husband? Every time there's a cut to her obediently playing statue, we can practically hear the director thinking, "Time stands still, this moment is eternity. Bad moments are the real eternity." What the film shows us goes against the grain of what it asks us to accept. The captain is such a charmless, reactionary stiff that when he comes home and Sally says she loves him, we don't believe her. With Bruce Dern in the role, Captain Hyde, who is supposed to be driven mad by the war, looks buggy-eyed and crazily distracted even before he goes to Vietnam. When the war deranges him, who can tell the difference? It's a fatally wrong piece of casting. Everything to do with Hyde is false, creepy, awful. He's like a psychotic Andy Gump. We feel no regret over anything that happens to him. The director has so little imaginative sympathy for a war supporter like Hyde that we don't feel Hyde's bewilderment at the ugliness of what his men have been doing. He doesn't seem a casualty of war. At the beginning, we see Sally's open eyes while she's enduring intercourse with her husband. Later, we watch her face during her orgasm with Luke. This scene is the dramatic center of the movie. The question in the viewer's mind is, what will she feel when her husband comes home and they go to bed? Will she respond, and if she does, how will he react? The psychological structure of the situation practically demands that he discover her infidelity by the sexual change in her. His attitude would then help determine whether the marriage will become a real one or will end. Instead, he finds out by means of the FBI eavesdroppers. We never learn how he would react to the new, responsive Sally, and Ashby has no ending, just a lot of cutting back and forth. Allowing for the differences in the wars, Coming Home may be the post-Vietnam equivalent of the post-Second World War movie The Best Years of Our Lives, which also dealt with returning veterans in smooth, popular terms. Maybe, considering the squalor and disruptiveness of the Vietnam War, we can't expect much more than this depoliticized, melodramatic elegy, with shame spreading in the sunshine. There's a pettiness of spirit here. People are judged too easily, and by class. Why are the other officers' wives shown so coolly indifferent to the conditions in the veterans' hospital? Might some of them have been so insulated by their own lack of experience, or so lonely and fearful of what could happen to their husbands that they dreaded the thought of the hospital? And were there no officers among the seriously wounded? There's a strong element of self-admiration in the film's anti-Vietnam attitudes. It's not enough that Hyde is wrong about the war. He's got to be a lousy lover, too, while the good war protester Luke, paraplegic though he may be, is so life-affirming that he brings Sally Hyde to life. Are liberals really such great lovers? From The New Yorker, February 20th, 1978. Thank you for listening.